On this Saturday night, the Indigenous community's overwhelming grief, mourning the hundreds believed to be buried at a former Saskatchewan residential school.
These are our kids we never got to bring home.
As fires consume 2 more Catholic churches in BC. The Florida condo collapse, why it was a disaster waiting to happen.
You kind of wondered, where did that water come from?
And what's hampering search efforts. After keeping COVID out, Australia's largest city locks down. And mysteries in the sky.
There is only one explanation.
The Pentagon's puzzling report on UFOs.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Members of the Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan are paying tribute to the hundreds of children believed to be buried near a former residential school. As many as 751 unmarked graves were detected at the site. For people connected to the school and the trauma inflicted in the residential school system, the discovery isn't surprising, but the memories from this era have returned and the wounds open again. Global National's Heather Yourex-West is in Saskatchewan for us tonight. Heather?
It has been an incredibly emotional few days for the families here on the Cowessess First Nation. And tonight the community is coming together to formally honor the children and others found buried in a field near the site of the former Maryvale Residential School.
Eagle Claw Bunny Tom didn't attend residential school himself, but many members of his family did.
My father attended Maryville Residential School. My cookum, my mushum, my little sister also attended Maryville Residential School.
The trauma experienced by each person was felt acutely throughout the family, a legacy of pain that has lasted long after the school closed.
The ones who attended residential school brought it with them throughout the rest of their life. And they're still working on it. And in many cases, they're still there to this day.
It's why the discovery of so many unmarked graves here is so hard.
We definitely have relatives buried there. The chief has already came and talked to me and brought up names. These are our kids. Kids we never got to bring home. You know?
The graves of those children now marked by hundreds of small orange flags. In the days since the burial site discoveries were announced, community members have gathered to honor those that were lost.
It's important to me to just do something in a way too, to have something to keep me busy through my grief.
In Regina, Prairie Crow works on another tribute. The community activist is gathering 751 backpacks, each marked with an orange handprint. She plans to display at the Saskatchewan Legislature on Canada Day.
I think Canada Day this year needs to be a day of grieving, a collective day of mourning and grieving.
For the people of the Cowessess First Nation, the grief will last long after July 1st, as they collectively mourn so many lives.
A moment of silence will be held at 7:51 to honor the 751 people believed to have been buried here, a number that will be added to the 215 discovered in Kamloops, BC, and a number that will likely grow in the weeks and months to come as more searches are carried out at other school sites across the country. Robin?
Heather Yourex-West near the Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan. There is some support for those who need it. The Indian Residential School Survivors Crisis Line is confidential and available 24 hours a day. The toll-free number is 1-866-925-4419. For the second time in less than a week, 2 Catholic churches have been burned to the ground in British Columbia. Both happened in the Similkameen region in the province's southern interior. One of the fires happened around 3 a.m. in the community of Headley, southwest of Penticton. An hour later, another fire burned in the area of Chapaka, near the Canada-U.S. border. The chief of the Lower Similkameen Indian Band tells Global News he has little doubt the fires are suspicious.
Of course, it's suspicious. 2 fires again, 2 more churches in one night. It's heartbreaking. You know, we still have people who worship and practice their religion.
Earlier this week, 2 other Catholic churches on First Nations land in the Okanagan burned to the ground. Those fires were deemed suspicious and investigations are underway. Global Affairs Canada confirms at least 4 Canadian citizens may have been affected by the collapse of that condo near Miami. For privacy reasons, it's not clear if the Canadians were killed or injured, but new details are emerging about the building's structural problems. As Jennifer Johnson reports, engineers sounded the alarm back in 2018.
Fire has spread deep inside the rubble of the collapsed Surfside condominium building, hampering rescue efforts as family members wait in agony to learn the fate of their loved ones.
Just wait. That's all there is to do is wait.
Rescuers are refusing to give up hope.
All of our training tells us that for at least the first 72 hours, there are high likelihood of people that could be alive in there.
Rescue teams are using dogs, cameras, and listening devices, and bucket brigades in their search.
It's a really, really difficult time right now. You wake up in the morning hoping that more and more people were pulled out, and that just news hasn't been what we had hoped.
With no warning, the 40-year-old tower collapsed early Thursday morning. 55 units came down as most residents were sleeping. Sergio Lozano is looking for his parents.
I was on the phone with her at 1:30. She called me up. And she said, I think there's an earthquake. And then the building started to shake, rattle, and she screamed, and then the phone went dead.
A structural survey in 2018 found abundant cracking in concrete columns, beams, and walls in the parking garage. Residents of the building next door say that garage was always flooded.
You've noticed these things because you'll come out in like a certain outfit and it's a beautiful day and you go, why am I stepping in a puddle of water to get to the car?
The tower's builders had to drive concrete pylons deep into the sandbar, but salt water intrusion can seep into concrete, corroding the steel inside. Forensic inspectors will try to determine what exactly led to this building crumbling down.
Everyone wants to know what is the cause. We are going to conduct a full and thorough investigation with all of our local, state, and federal resources coming on the scene.
A makeshift memorial with pictures of the missing has been set up near the site. For now, it's a race against time for rescuers and a gut-wrenching wait for loved ones. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
It's been a constant race during this pandemic, but Canada is showing signs of being in the lead. Over 76% of eligible Canadians have their first dose, and almost 30% are fully vaccinated. And the feds have finally released guidelines for double-dose Canadians, including a COVID risk assessment tool. Here's Mike Le Couteur.
They are the sounds Manitobans have been waiting more than a month to hear. The province started to trim restrictions Saturday, allowing hair salons and restaurants to reopen with limited capacity.
Takes a little getting used to, even being indoors with all these people again, but that's part of getting back to normal.
In Ontario, hair salons are set to open next week, and the push is on in Toronto to ramp up immunization rates. Sunday, Scotiabank Arena will be turned into one of the largest COVID-19 vaccination sites in Canada, where they expect to hand out 25,000 shots in one day.
The focus has to be on the 25% or so of people who have not even got a first dose. Let's think about that. That's very worrisome for them.
The number of fully vaccinated Canadians is climbing. Even Canada's top doctor got her second dose Saturday. And now many are asking, once fully vaccinated, what are they allowed to do? The federal government released guidelines Friday and relaunched this risk assessment website in partnership with the National Institute on Aging. By filling out the 21 questions about your potential gathering, Canadians are supposed to get an idea of how risky it could be. But this epidemiologist says it's too complicated.
It already starts on the first page with a question that I was struggling to understand, even though I'm the scientific director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table. It's not viable, I'm sorry to say.
Public health experts helped develop the tool, and while the creators know it's not for everyone, they say it has already helped tens of thousands of Canadians.
This really gives them some expert guidance from some of the leading experts across Canada to really help them make sense of what they need to know as they start navigating, gathering with others again.
Something more Canadians are looking forward to as more provinces ease COVID-19 restrictions over the next week. Mike Le Couteur, Global News, Ottawa.
Millions of people in Sydney, Australia are under a hard 2-week lockdown because of the spread of the Delta variant. Just before the stay-at-home orders were issued, people lined up at grocery stores to stock up. There are now close to 100 cases of the Delta variant. The outbreak has been linked to a limo driver who wasn't vaccinated and tested positive after taking an international flight crew to a quarantine hotel. It's Sydney's first lockdown since December 2020. With low vaccination rates, Australia is struggling to maintain its early pandemic success. British Health Secretary Matt Hancock is saying goodbye to his job after being busted for an affair.
I've been to see the Prime Minister to resign as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care.
Hancock had been facing calls to quit since photos surfaced of his affair with a senior aide. It wasn't the fact that he was married, but that he broke COVID-19 rules. Intimate contact between people from separate households wasn't allowed at the time. In his resignation letter, Hancock wrote, "We owe it to people who have sacrificed so much in this pandemic to be honest when we have let them down, as I have done, by breaching the guidance." We keep hearing there's a federal election on the horizon in Canada. Speculation has long been simmering. Canadians could be headed back to the polls ever since the Liberals won a minority government. When the vote happens, it will be Erin O'Toole's first election squaring off against Justin Trudeau. Mercedes Stephenson spoke with the Conservative leader, and he sounds confident, Mercedes.
Robin, Erin O'Toole has been the leader of the official opposition for exactly 10 months. However, despite a series of scandals for the Liberal government, the Conservatives are still trailing the Liberals in the polls. On this week's edition of the West Block, I'll ask Erin O'Toole why he hasn't been able to capitalize on Liberal missteps, especially in key battlegrounds located in Ontario and Quebec. O'Toole insists he's confident and says when Canadians look back at the Trudeau track record, they'll think twice before voting Liberal.
So the only poll that matters, Mercedes, is Election Day. I've been behind in polls before and have won because I'm experienced, I bring people together, and I get things done. And only the Conservative Party has a plan. Mr. Trudeau competes with the Bloc, the NDP, and the Green to spend money to shut down parts of the economy. We need everyone working after COVID, so they'll have a stark choice.
I also asked Mr. O'Toole about reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous communities. Last week, in a speech, the Conservative leader said the road to reconciliation does not mean tearing Canada down. I asked him what that meant. Mr. O'Toole says it's about reconciling the horrific parts of our past with a commitment to do better.
I think Canada is a great country. It is not perfect. And when we celebrate it, we need to recommit to its principles. That's what I've said. Mr. Trudeau and some of his ministers almost want to cancel Canada Day because we failed in the past. Let's channel that frustration of when we fall short to make Canada even better, more inclusive, and to truly reconcile that past. That is at the centerpiece of reconciliation.
Reconciliation, the economic recovery, and the national vaccine rollout will all likely be key issues in any upcoming federal election campaign, which it seems could be happening sooner than many had hoped, perhaps this summer even, given the political climate here in Ottawa. Robin?
Thanks for that, Mercedes. And you can watch the full interview with opposition leader Erin O'Toole tomorrow on the West Block, right here on Global. Coming up, one is the loneliest number. Now add a pandemic to it. The perspective from an emergency doctor. In New Mexico, a hot air balloon has crashed, killing 5 people. Police say the balloon hit a power line and then caught fire. 3 men and 2 women between the ages of 40 and 60 were killed. The pilot of the balloon is believed to be among the dead. According to Stats Canada, more than 500,000 Canadians over the age of 65 cope with feelings of isolation. That number was before the pandemic, which has only exacerbated the problem. Limited contact with friends and loved ones have taken a toll. And as Jamie Maraca reports, loneliness isn't just a state of mind. It can have serious, even deadly effects on the human body.
Since losing her husband in 2007, 80-year-old Sharon Batala says her day-to-day life has been lonely, and the pandemic has made it worse.
Social engagement was down to practically zilch.
Batala says loneliness has left her with feelings of grief and sadness. For some, those emotions can manifest into physical ailments.
Loneliness actually has wide-ranging consequences for the entire body. It affects the immune system. It affects wound healing.
Toronto emergency room doctor Jacques Lee has seen this firsthand, especially over the last 17 months.
Loneliness is as bad for you as smoking cigarettes.
In fact, Lee estimates loneliness kills 45,000 Canadians each year, a staggering number he plans to target with a new trial. Beginning in September, Mount Sinai emergency room patients 70 years plus who are diagnosed with loneliness will be able to join a phone call follow-up program.
They work with the individual to identify goals that are meaningful to the individual, what would improve their quality of life.
Volunteers will then coach patients to reach those goals. A similar program has already found success in Australia. Danila Bizdag has spent years studying loneliness and says while the pandemic has certainly exacerbated isolation, it's also offered researchers a unique opportunity.
To learn something new about this capacity that makes humans human, complex social interaction.
Back in Calgary, Batala isn't convinced there's a solution.
There will always be loneliness.
The human condition, she says, and an unfortunate reality of aging. Jamie Maracher, Global News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the odyssey continues for the elephants with a travel bug. A mammoth trek taking place in China has intrigued wildlife experts. In March of 2020, a herd of elephants left their nature reserve, and they've been on the go since. Their slow sojourn has sparked roadblocks. Towns and villages had to be evacuated, and now these pachyderms are heading home. And that has fascinated scientists even more. Here's Redmond Shannon.
They are simultaneously lumbering and majestic. The 500-kilometre cross-country tour of this herd of elephants has captivated China. Their naps, their dips, their highway strolls, all caught on camera. Authorities are tracking every plodding footstep, even evacuating neighbourhoods in their path. The elephants' journey began in spring of 2020 when they headed north out of their nature reserve, through villages, towns and eventually to the outskirts of the huge provincial capital, Kunming. In recent days, they have started to head south again.
Wow, they just boomed like big news.
Becky Xu Chen is an elephant researcher from Kunming. She says these long treks are not uncommon, but wild elephants in cities are.
We had no experience with this ever in the past.
The reason for their journey is still unknown. Chen says something may have frightened them, or they could have gained a taste for the convenience of human-grown food.
The crops, which are more tasty, has more nutrition, and also they don't need to spend like 18 hours in the forest to looking for the bland flavored food. They can just stay in the rice field or maize field or sugarcane field.
Asian elephant numbers in China have finally started climbing again in recent years, now at about 300.
We still want to have more elephants, but how to help them to coexist with local communities, especially to the new regions where elephants are going back.
The extensive drone surveillance is helping researchers learn more about the animal's behaviour.
I'm astounded that these elephants in China are so calm around the drones, and they're asleep, lying down. They don't get up. They don't have any reaction.
Elephant expert Phyllis Lee is impressed with the efforts to keep the animals and humans safe. But her great concern is that the gentle, but sometimes deadly, giants will struggle to find somewhere to settle. Never mind, find their way home again. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Tic Tac UFO. Up next, the mysterious object at the center of a U.S. military report. For years, UFO enthusiasts have waited for the day the U.S. military opened its files on possible alien sightings. Well, a much-anticipated report on these close encounters was finally presented to America's Congress. But as Mike Le reports, the chances of finding any solid answers in its pages remain a mystery.
In 2004, the U.S. Navy saw something on radar it couldn't explain. One of the planes sent to investigate was flown by Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich. who saw something unexplainable.
We were able to then visually pick up what we describe as a tic-tac, because that's what it looked like, this white oblong shaped object that was moving very fast.
Dietrich says she's not a UFO person, but she also can't unsee what she saw. And at least now the U.S. intelligence community is backing up her story. Sort of. A special report has been delivered to Congress which details incidents involving the U.S. military encountering UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, which UFO researcher Victor Vigiani says is their way of avoiding what he considers obvious.
These things are off-world craft, without a doubt.
The report doesn't go that far. Its major concern is determining if there's a threat to U.S. national security. It concludes there's no one explanation for all the incidents, although it does allow that advanced technologies may have been used. Beyond that, or just beyond, it doesn't say.
I have asked some of our senior scientists, and at least one of them has stated that he holds the extraterrestrial hypothesis just above some of the others. So if I had to make a bet, I would bet that it's something off-world, but again, I don't have enough data.
My gosh! That this conversation is happening in such a prominent way was once thought impossible within the UFO community. Considering the number of hoaxes and explainable phenomena, credibility has always proven to be elusive.
It's a big step forward. There's no doubt about it. It's a big step forward, but it's not the complete answer.
It's a truth, but not the final truth about what's out there. Mike Le Couteur, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Robin Gill. Your Canada tonight is a pair of ruddy ducks in Saskatoon. We'd love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.